with Keene.
Andy Hamilton of Track Wrestling here with 1966 Waterloo West High graduate Dan Gable. In the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, we had the Battle of Waterloo Hall of Fame ceremony tonight. Certainly lots of great stories about that era of wrestling in this community and such tradition in this community. What are your most vivid recollections of the people that went in the Hall of Fame tonight?
Well, I actually had a lot of recollections and reflections because people don't know this about me, but when I was a kid growing up in Waterloo, I grew up on the east side. So that's East Waterloo. And that's over here, East Waterloo, St. That's the Trojans. And we had quite a few Trojans in there tonight. And we had some sailors, Columbus, but they weren't really around when I was there. But we had a rivalry a lot with East Waterloo. In fact, I brought up one of the rivalries about the spectators getting out of hand and chairs flying. And I thought Siddons got hit by a chair, but maybe he only ducked and missed it. But I had a lot of recollections. But my first school was really East Waterloo because my dad and a guy named Don Buzzard were really good friends growing up. And I lived on the east side of the river, and so I followed all the East Waterloo guys. And my first people that taught me wrestling were the Buzzards. And Bob Buzzard, Don Buzzard. The dad was Don Sr., of course, and then you had Don Jr. But I was in their rooms when I was just a little teeny kid bopping around. So, once my dad moved us to the west side part of the river, then I got to know Siddons, and he was in there tonight, and he took Finn Erickson's award because Finn has passed on, and Finn is a name that was at West Waterloo, a Finnish guy, I'm kind of a promoter of Finland a little bit because I'm a sauna guy and I love saunas, not for cutting weight, but just for feeling good. And I got a lot of things that I think about. But the Gibbons, Joe Gibbons, I learned a lot. I just learned a lot about their family tonight. And wow, I didn't realize that, his mom's from Cresco, you got relatives up there. My idol, Tom Peckham, when I was growing up, Cresco, Iowa, Nichols from Cresco, Kurtelmeyer's from Cresco, and so, all of a sudden I go to school in Ames, Iowa, my gosh, that's where the Gibbons went, that's where Nichols was, that's where Peckham was, then I all of a sudden go to work for a guy named Kurtelmeyer, and God bless him, and he taught me so much about coaching, and he was a promotions guy, and it's just, it was unbelievable that, my life has kind of evolved from Waterloo to Ames, and some of my idols are in Cresco, and then I ended up in Iowa City, and Iowa City wasn't a great wrestling town at that time. Kurtelmeyer wanted to make it great, and he certainly did. And that's where I've been there for many years, 40 years or so or more. I don't even know. I have to add them up. But it's one of these things that you come back, and then I remember Dave Sadler, who got inducted tonight, but he wasn't here. But Obie Sadler, I knew Obie Sadler, but Dave Sadler wasn't here because he's with another guy in New York tonight, Sully, the guy that landed the plane. I mean, we got connections. We got some connections in wrestling. Now, Dave Sadler was there because he was in the service, and he got to know the pilot. But there was a lot of things. And then when I was living in Waterloo, we didn't have Central. We didn't have Central High School. And then there's a guy in there that's a state champion from Central High School. But you know what? He had Waterloo West connections. He won both places. Somehow, I think we're giving Central a little more promotion, but they don't have Central anymore in the high school, so I'm going to give West Waterloo that one. So, it was a great night. And of course, Bob Buckley, who went in, he was a good wrestler, but he went in more as a great wrestling fan and supporter. It was one of these things that what he said really made a lot of sense, and he told us history of getting Iowa and Oklahoma together just somewhat between the Gable and the Smiths. And it was a little bit rocky for a while, but when we got these museums together in Waterloo and Stillwater, and Buckley had a lot to do with that, he gets a lot of credit for what we have. Now, do we have it to where we want to have it? No. We need to upgrade everything. We need to get wrestling going better. We need the whole town to get better. You know, you don't want to have a town that has 80,000 in population and now it's maybe 60 or 65, whatever it is, and now you're combining with, you know, some of your competition, Cedar Falls, and now it's called the Cedar Valley, and I love that. And I love it that, you know, Don Bosco, Denver, LaPorte City, they all have great wrestling. But within our community, we can do better in sports and activities and give more opportunities for kids to be great. And this is a good catalyst place because there are so many champions in wrestling from America, from Iowa, from West Waterloo, from East Waterloo, from Columbus, from Denver, from Don Bosco. You know, so you know we need to work a little harder.
What was it like growing up in Waterloo in the 60s and 70s from a wrestling standpoint when the rivalries were that hot? I mean, you talked about a year that Waterloo East went down to the state tournament and didn't lose a match, right? The team?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about. No, they won every state. They didn't lose a match. You're right, and they pulled it out. And they had 5 athletes, and West Waterloo had 8, and we had beaten them in districts easily. And they had 3 champions. Somehow they ended up with 5. And so they won the state. That's my only second place, you know, in high school, from a team point of view. But you know, I really think that that the past kind of dictates what's going on currently a little bit, and we're not upholding that past in this town. But I think this town has a really good catalyst here to help all the youth for the future, and that's kind of what I really like about. Even though I knew it was going to be a struggle a little bit, because museums are more like, you know, they struggle a little, but we don't need to do that with this one. If we can get some youth more ready for the future. And guess what? We got a wrestling room right within this museum, and we want to renovate it, make it 3 times bigger. Besides the wrestling room, we really want to have these artifacts here, not just be looking at walls and seeing pictures, which are great, but we need technology. And we need to be able to pull up everything in our sport, and that's what we're trying to do right now. So, you know, we could use a little help. But I think what people they underestimate the importance of how excellence can really determine what the future is. And so we got to use some of this excellence to make sure that things go well.
Outside of this museum, what's the biggest project on your mind at this point in wrestling that you're working on?
I would say right now that the rules of Olympic wrestling and the fact that the leaders of Olympic wrestling and the fact that that we involve more females. Even though we have it at that upper Olympic level, we don't have a grassroots level. And so we're not going to be able to compete with a country like Japan right now. They're pretty much dominating. But, you know, we're 3rd, 4th, 2nd, you know, Russia. Things are happening, but we're kind of starting and we're working from the top down, and we need to work from the bottom up a little more.
Thanks for joining us, Coach. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's good to be here, and I thank Track Wrestling, and glad to be aboard.